I've been using a 2-light setup for my live streams for quite some time. In fact, when I first started live streaming, I purchased a kit off Amazon from a company called Limo Studio that included 4 lights, a green screen, and the stands to mount the green screen that cost me about $150 US. And I've been using that kit for years without any issues. However, there were a couple things that I didn't like about my current setup, specifically the 2 softbox style lights that I use for my live streams, that caused me to start looking for new lights to replace those. You see, I purchased the Limo Studio lights just before LED lighting started becoming popular and the price for LED lights was still high. This means that I was stuck with using CFL bulbs, which didn't allow me to do 2 important things. Change the color temperature of the lights between daylight or tungsten or white to orange, but more importantly, I couldn't adjust the brightness of the light output. At least, not without replacing the entire bulb, which means I would have to carry different wattage bulbs for each color for different lighting setups. You can see how that can be quite a pain. I eventually landed on a kit from Neewer, who is a budget-friendly brand that I've purchased stuff from in the past, and that for the most part always did what I needed the product to do. And given that these were going to remain stationary and I wouldn't be breaking them down and setting them up repeatedly, meant that I didn't mind going with a budget-friendly brand. So let's roll the intro and then jump into my review of the Neewer 48-watt LED softbox lighting kit that is being sold on Amazon for about $150 US. Most streamers and content creators don't realize that proper lighting is much more important than the equipment you are using to record with. You can make a webcam look really good if you have great lighting. However, you can't make an expensive mirrorless or DSLR camera, like the Canon M200 that I use, look good with poor lighting. The reason I specifically decided to go with the Neewer lights was mainly because of the price and because it was a brand that I recognized in the budget-friendly space. And again, more specifically with LED lights, they had several features, as I said in the intro, that my CFL lights just didn't. The biggest being the fact that I could change the color of the light from daylight to tungsten, or more specifically 3200 Kelvin to 5500 Kelvin, and the ability to adjust how bright I wanted the light output. Now, while I could have used the old lights still and just got different wattage CFL bulbs for my different needs, it still meant having to constantly change out bulbs depending on what I was shooting or the lighting style I wanted. Even if I did that, there were still other issues like the energy usage issue, which more specifically means increased heat compared to LED lighting, which affected my office. You see, even though CFL bulbs don't put out near the heat traditional lights, incandescent lights do, when you're using 105 watt CFL bulbs, which is equivalent to about a 400 watt incandescent bulb, it's still going to be putting out quite a bit of heat. Pair that with the fact that I've got a large green screen that hangs directly behind me when I'm streaming, I'm basically creating a small space, a small room, and I'm blocking all that heat in from my lights, my gaming PC, and everything else that I use when I'm live streaming. And this would easily heat up my gaming space. While that's not necessarily horrible during the winter months here in Ohio, in summers it can make it brutal back here, even with the AC running full blast. So did I make the right choice? Was it worth paying $150 for a set of 2 LED softbox lights, which is equivalent to the price I paid for the entire kit that I started with that included a green screen, 4 lights, and the bars and everything to set up the green screen? Well, yes, but also no. In terms of upgrading from CFL to LED technology, there are a lot of things I like about the lights and LED lighting in general. But there are several things I dislike about the Neewer lights specifically, which makes me wonder if I should have chosen a different brand or if budget-friendly lights are even worth it at all in this specific category. So let's start with what I love about these lights and more specifically about LED lights in general. I do love the fact that I can adjust the brightness and color temperature of the lights directly from the rear by spinning one of 2 knobs. It makes creating different lighting techniques easy, and I find myself actually doing it. Before, while I had different size CFL bulbs and colors, most of the time I just leave the same ones in, as I just didn't feel like hassling with digging in the bag for other bulbs and then having to actually switch them out. I also think these lights get plenty bright enough for everything outside maybe professional use. For both making YouTube videos as well as live streaming, I've never had an issue with these putting out enough light. And in fact, I never even run these lights at 100% brightness, as I just don't need to in order to achieve enough lighting for whatever I'm doing. I also like that they include a built-in fan to help with heat dissipation, to make sure that they don't overheat, which then would cause damage to the electronics inside of the lights, as this is something that I've actually seen be an issue with other budget-friendly lights and a complaint in a lot of reviews. Like the Godox light I reviewed a while back, they can be run not only off AC power, but also off of Sony NP-F550 or 970 batteries, if needed, in case you wanted to use them somewhere without access to direct power. And then one last thing that was kind of unexpected, and I didn't even realize it when I purchased them, was the shape of the softboxes themselves. You see, most lights I've purchased and used come with a square softbox. While this isn't necessarily a problem, I found that with the rectangular shape that these lights produce, or have, that I can direct the light a bit better by deciding to have the long side either horizontally or vertical. And lastly, I think overall they are a good bang for the buck when compared to a lot of other budget-friendly options in this same price range. However, this leads me to what I dislike about them and why, if I had to do it over again, I'd probably just save up a bit more money and try to get lights that were a bit higher priced, as I think this entire price range of these budget lights just fall apart. You see, in a nutshell, it's the build quality. While they aren't horrible and they work well in terms of doing what they need to do, the quality of the materials used actually shocked me quite a bit compared to other newer products that I've used and owned. First, when I unboxed them, one of the plastic pieces over the display on the back of the light had fallen off, and I had to super glue it back on. And yes, you heard that right, plastic, which I don't necessarily mind as they are budget-friendly lights, and I would have ignored this issue entirely if it was the only issue. But the stands for the lights, they're shit. I don't know how else to put it. I wouldn't be surprised if constant use of setting up and tearing them down didn't render them useless after just a year of use. In fact, if I had to compare them to all other lights that I've ever used and owned, including other budget-friendly lights, they easily win the award for having the worst quality stands that I have ever seen. Luckily for me, once set up, these particular lights don't move and never get torn down and set up repeatedly, so I'm hoping it won't be an issue for myself. Lastly, the mechanism for attaching the softboxes, and this is not just newer light heads, but it's a lot of these LED lights in this price range. They require you to place the rods into the head of the light, into plastic holes that are then placed into the softbox. However, the plastic isn't reinforced in any way, and literally, after just being in place for a while, already being set up, randomly one of the rods broke through the plastic, which required me to use duct tape to be able to keep one of the rods in the hole going forward, since the plastic was now broke and the rod would just keep slipping out of the back. The first and last issue could have just been a fluke with my units, with one of my units, as the other unit didn't have that problem with the display screen or the rods breaking through the plastic. But nonetheless, there was just too many small issues that makes me not feel very confident in recommending these lights to others. They easily could have reinforced the holes in which the rods insert and should have, and they easily could have produced better stands, as I've owned lights that cost less money and had much better stands. But they didn't. I'm honestly surprised how good of ratings these lights have on Amazon, if I'm being completely honest. I guess if you're only looking at budget-friendly options in that price range, they may be the best bang for the buck in that category, which would explain the high rating. So then you may be asking, well, if you don't recommend these lights, which ones do you recommend? And that's the issue I'm having with this video, if I'm being honest. I wish I had a suggestion in this $150 range, but I just don't, at least not for lights that are LED. Again, if it was me, I probably would have held off and saved up a bit more and gone with a company like Godox, whose stuff I've really been enjoying quite a bit lately. I'll link a set of their LED softboxes, the Godox, below in the description, as well as these lights if you are interested in looking and comparing the two. But know that they are going to be a bit more expensive than something like the Neewer lights or another budget-friendly brand in that category. However, I honestly think if you're buying anything in that price range, at least from what I'm currently seeing on Amazon at the time of recording this video, that you're probably wasting your money. The way most of these budget-friendly options currently handle the way softboxes are attached is just atrocious, in my opinion, and just asking for damage into the future, especially if you're setting up and tearing down these light boxes repeatedly. If you've already purchased these lights and you want to leave your comments down below, feel free. Like I said, maybe I just got a bad batch of lights, but for now, I definitely had to rate these as buyer beware. And with that said, thanks so much for watching. If this video helped you out, please don't forget to hit the like button and consider subscribing to the channel as well as ringing the bell next to the subscribe button to be notified when I post new videos. And until next time, peace out, everybody.